Hello, good morning and welcome back. It's been a while, it's been a couple of weeks since I've done a video because I've been on holiday. And before I went on holiday, or a year ago in fact, I promised you that at 3,000 subscribers I would give you one of the best techniques for oil pastels that there is. Well, I've way past the 3,000 now. I'm at least 100 past that, and it's like everything else, things tend to build up. So I've got a few videos coming up, but I really ought to get this one out of the way because it was a promise, and if I make a promise I try to stick to them. So let's have a look at it, shall we? So I'm actually going to use some previous swatches of oil pastels that I've got here, and I showed you blend and tests on them. The reason I'm doing that is because there's obviously already one layer on there that I've done, and this is a fairly smooth paper, so this is going to show you that with a smooth paper this technique will work as well as a rougher type of paper. So when you get to this point, it may be that you are struggling to get more oil pastel on there. Well, I'm going to add some more layers to it because it has dried out for a couple of weeks, and I'm going to try to go over this with a darker colour. In fact, let's use a black, shall we? I'm going to go over this with a darker colour. I'm actually using the Lightwish oil pastels for this. It will be better with a not quite so sticky oil pastel, but this will also show you that a stickier, softer oil pastel will also work. So I've built up a layer there, and I'm going to try to put a lighter colour on top of this. So let's say, for argument's sake, I was doing a picture and the layers were all getting darker and darker, and I wanted to then put some highlights on. Well, that's going to be quite difficult with a not so soft oil pastel. It's easy with this soft oil pastel because you can impasto it. But you can see that the black will just mix with the lighter colour, especially if you're using a slightly firmer oil pastel. Even in this case, it has not done what you would like it to do. So how do we get them highlights on there? Let's say, for argument's sake, I'd done a picture of a cat and the background was dark like this, and I wanted to lighten it up, and I wanted some white whiskers to come out of there, or I wanted some leaf highlights, or anything. It could be anything. I might want to just build on this background. Well, what you need is some fixative, or varnish in this case. Now, you can use the Sennelier oil pastel fixative in a spray can, but what you will have to do is to mask off the areas that you don't want to cover with this, that you don't want the highlights on. You don't have to varnish the whole picture, but what you do, I'm going to do this over the course of a couple of hours. I'm going to paint some spots on here. Find yourself an appropriate brush, and I'm going to put my varnish on here. I'm going to use the talons on this side and here. So that you can see the difference. Now I'm going to have to let that dry for a couple of hours. But what you can also use, if you would like to use the Sennelier oil pastel fixative in the spray can, but you don't want to use it as a spray, you can actually buy this. Now this is the same as what's in the spray can, and I'm going to decanter a little bit of this out, and I'm going to use this on the other side. So this is exactly the same as the oil fixative in the can. So I'm going to use an appropriate brush again. I'm going to brush some of that over here and some of that here. Now you have to work out what parts of your picture you want to do this on. and you will then have to let it dry for at least a couple of hours. Now what this is doing is giving you a separate surface on which to work. You can leave these parts that you aren't bothered about to put highlights on and just do the bits that you want. So you could use lines, you can use dots, you can cover the whole picture if you really want to, if you want to really brighten the whole thing up. You just choose the bits that you want to make right, or to give highlights on. So you do all your oil pasting, go as far as you can. I usually do it right near the finish. I think I've finished the picture and then might go back on with some more highlights. I've got a picture of a little girl that I did. I really messed up on her face. I was trying to get some shadows in there and it didn't look right. So I painted over that with this Sennelier fixative, in that case I think it was. And I highlighted the whole picture again. I'll show you what I did. So we need to now let this dry for a couple of hours. It's likely that you're going to need 2 layers, but we'll see when we come back. So I'll see you in a bit. So here we are, 2.5 hours later. Please forgive any noise. We have thunderstorms at the moment after all the sunshine that we've had, which was incredible on my holiday. We're now getting a bit of rain. But getting back to this, as you can see, where the varnishes have gone on, it looks a little bit duller. Okay, now that's a normal occurrence that will happen. And in the middle here we have just pastel, so I can still smear that, but the ones where the varnish is I can't smear. So let's see how these highlights are going to go on. This is the talon side. Look, already we have improvement. So we can get nice bright highlights. In this case with the talons, it looks as if you can just do 1 layer. I would let that dry naturally for a day or 2 perhaps before even reapplying another layer over that. Let's have a look at the Sennelier. I wouldn't say that was quite as good. So I would say, almost without doubt, on the Sennelier side, you're going to need a little bit more fixative because it's still mixing slightly with the black. Let's try that again down here. It might be that it hasn't dried completely. It could be some of that. But you can see here it's still doing nothing, but here it's got brighter. So if you wanted a halfway house, that would work. But on the talon side, that's dried off completely. I think it's probably because it's thinner. It does say on these tins, bottles, that you can let it dry for 2.5 hours, 3 hours, whatever. But probably the best thing to do is to let it dry overnight. But look, we can do this now. And that really, all that is doing is segregating each layer. And dependent on the pastels you use, you'll get a different effect. But you can then start layering up from that again. Let's put some white on there. It's not quite dry, but let that dry and then start layering up again, and you'll be able to get nice highlights wherever you want them. So that's an incredibly powerful and useful technique to be using. So if you get to a point where you have too many layers on, your pastel isn't adhering to the underlayers of pastel that you've got, put some varnish or fixative on. It may be that you might need 1, possibly 2 layers of varnish, and only thin layers, and then you put your highlights on top. And dependent on the pastels you're using as well, it will give you a brighter highlighted look and the detail that you can get with that particular pastel. So it gives you another surface, and once you've done that, you can actually build up from that again. So you've got your first layers, you've got your varnish, you've got your next layers of pastel. You can then varnish over the top of that to put even more layers on. Use it sparingly is my opinion, because you can get yourself into a bit of a mess, and just use it on the bits that you want to actually detail. So for example, if you were doing a cat's whisker, just paint the cat's whisker in and then put your pastel over, or a leaf or several leaves. Just do them leaves wherever they need to be. You know, all sorts of things that you could do, maybe a boat's mast or something like that. But that is a little bit more powerful than scratching out. But you need to practice this technique to perfect it. I hope you liked that, and I did promise, and I hope it's going to be useful to you. Don't forget I have memberships. Please become a member. Don't forget to subscribe and share and like wherever you can, if of course you do. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care for now. Bye.